Has everybody had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
All right, I got a motion from Vice Chair Long. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Do I have any public? Huh? No. Miss Thomas. Sorry. All right, so I got a motion from Vice Chair Long, a second from Ms. Thomas. Do I have any comments on the agenda? Do I have any public comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Hey, Joe, do you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right. So it looks like Historic and Architectural Review Board, we do have one item on the agenda. A request to construct single-family house within the Newberry district. Give me 1 second as I pull out this handy-dandy cheat sheet. All right, so this is a quasi-judicial procedure. As a reminder, this means that the commission will stop being a legislative body and will become a judicial board, which means that we have to follow certain rules and adhere to different standards of decision-making. The primary rule we must follow concerns testimony, and the substantial and competent evidence must be met when the judicial board makes a decision. The standard states the following: all public testimonies will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. Which at one point I'll ask the city attorney to read into the ordinance by title and number. Right now, what I'd like to do is ask the clerk to swear in any party speaking. So those that are wishing to speak on this particular item, please stand and you will be sworn in. All right. I'd like to ask on this agenda item, have we had any ex parte communication? None. Ms. Bolo, no. Ms. Thomas? Vice Chair Long? No, I have none. All right. Then it'll go in the order of presentation. As staff will give the overview, the applicant could go ahead and present with no time limit. The staff will report and give us a recommendation. We have had no third-party interveners reach out, so we will go into public comments, which will be limited to 3 minutes. The applicant at that point may cross-examine, staff may cross-examine. Then as a decision-making body, through the chair may ask questions of the staff, applicant, and the participants. Final argument may be made by the applicant and the staff related solely to the evidence and testimony presented at the hearing. The city attorney will advise us of the decision-making body as the applicable law and factual findings. We will go into deliberation, and after deliberation, a vote shall be made to approve with conditions, continue, or deny the application. With that being said, Mr. Attorney, can you read into the ordinance?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. This is resolution number CA 2022-004, a resolution of the Historic Architectural Review Board of the City of Newberry, Florida, for approval of a certificate of appropriateness authorized under Section 11.11 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations for the construction of a detached single-family home on land which is within the historic district located at 144 Southwest 258th Street, tax parcel number 02283-003-000, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair, is to pass resolution number CA 2022-04. You have the ability to pass it with further amendments to the resolution. You can deny it or continue it to a date certain in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir.
All right, JP, the floor is yours. If you want to go ahead, I guess the applicant's not here, but you'll give us the overview and all the rundown on this one.
You're correct, Mr. Chair. Thank you. John Paul Perez, City of Newberry Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you is a certificate of appropriateness for a single-family home located at 144 Southwest 258th Street. The image on the screen now is the boundaries of the historic district and the location, general location of the property. Here's an aerial showing the limits of the lot that they'll be developing on. This photograph taken today is the subject property, current condition. Just for context, I'm going to give you some images of the properties around it. This is to the south, originally constructed in 1929, used to serve as the Little Red Schoolhouse lunchroom. This property to the north, 2011, actually that's the effective year. The actual year that this was placed in the property was 2007, according to property appraiser records. This is the home to the north. And to the east is a minimal traditional home built in 1902, according to county records. And so just an overview of the request. They are requesting to construct a single-family home. It'll be approximately 1,700 square feet or 1,800 square feet. It's on a quarter acre. Current land use is residential low density, and the zoning is single-family, so the request is appropriate. This is the original request that was submitted. There were some modifications that were requested by staff as a condition of approval. There was a lot of discussion at the last hearing regarding the design that was being proposed. This is just an example of construction done by the same contractor that's being employed. Also here in the city of Newberry. I'll just give you an idea of what the final product may or may not look like. And then this is the revised elevation of the proposed home, which incorporates elements of the craftsman or bungalow style architecture, which is a combination of arts and crafts and traditional Japanese architecture. Some of the elements that they've added is the shingled siding on the gable. Yep. They added a metal roof. They have exposed trusses, which is typical for this architectural style. They've added the column with this stone treatment around the base of the column, which is typical of craftsman style. They have shiplap siding on the home, as well as an eyebrow over the window and the door. And as well, they added a carriage house style garage door, just to add more interest to the facade. There are also those decorative braces that were requested last time. The placement of them I like a little bit better this time. I think the architect did a great job of placing them intentionally. And this is just an example of what craftsman style architecture generally looks like. We have a lot of it here in Alachua County generally, here in the city of Newberry, and it's very prevalent in Gainesville as well. Staff finds the request consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development regulations, as well as the historic district regulations. And that completes my presentation. The applicant's not here to present, so I'm going to provide the board with staff's recommendation, which is to approve. Do you have any questions for staff?
Let's see here. Before we get into that, public comments. All right. Hearing none. At this point, we can ask questions. I believe we heard this on the last one, and we gave recommendations, so feel free to take the floor. None. I will say thank you to staff, thank you to the applicant and the engineer or the architect on it, taking into our consideration and our requests. Definitely looks a lot better, more in line in what we would like to see in our historic district going forward. So, I guess I gotta ask the attorney. Advise decision-making body of applicable law and factual findings.
Substantial and competent evidence is the statement.
All right. And we can go into deliberation. If there is no deliberation, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I got a motion for Vice Chair Long.
Second.
I got a second from Member Joe. All right, any questions, comments on the motion? All right, do we have anything? No? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sounds like motion passes unanimous. All right. So we are out of quasi judicial. And topics for members' discussion, I will start with Ms. Parker. Mr. Joe.
Well, I was wondering, how we left the meeting last time, but, about removing the house that we all voted to approve last time. Did we give staff any recommendation as far as standards? I know there's some discussion I think you had about reviewing our standards. And when this comes up before us again and we have to deal with a demolition potentially, and also we talked about other standards as far as the district is concerned. Did you get any direction last time from us?
Indirectly, yes.
Okay.
So we are working on a presentation for the board to go over Department of Interior standards, our criteria and our code, as well as what other historic districts in the state of Florida have done as far as providing further guidance beyond those two levels.
For demolition, you
Yes.
talked about some of those things. So when it comes up again, if we have to deal with this, then we have some more exacting criteria of how to evaluate.
Correct. We have some pretty good criteria currently, as Scott Walker, the city attorney, had read into the minutes, but we'll go over it in detail. And this, hoping to have for January, sooner than later. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Polo? Ms. Thomas?
We tabled this issue last time, and I didn't want to interrupt quasi-judicial for the question he asked, and we weren't clear when we made the overlay district. We didn't include the overlay district, the historic district, because we had design standards. And then when we got to this issue, we said, well, there are no design standards. That's why we could build a kind of a cookie cutter, non-historic house. Did we get clarity on inside the historic district? Do we have design standards that will compel this, or do we have to work with each builder on a case-by-case basis in order to compel this?
Great question. So the material that I reviewed that we have saved on our drive is all guidance from the Department of Interior. We have criteria adopted in our code. And maybe Brian can speak to the those regulations a little bit.
Okay.
So, as far as commercial development along the corridor within the historic district, just in a very broad stroke, what it says is that commercial development will be designed in the Florida Vernacular Architectural Design Standard. It also suggests that homes within the district should also try to follow that to the greatest extent possible. Hasn't always been done over the years, but as more emphasis is being placed on the historic district, this is an example of one where the HARB sent it back for more consideration to add some additional architectural features to lend itself to that original style. It does not require somebody to actually build in that style, which would be actually designing an arts and crafts style home, but it does suggest that they need to add architectural features to at least to the facade of the house, the front facade, that would lend itself more to that era. And so I think that's what we've done here, but certainly we could add a few more criteria or broaden some of the existing criteria to make it a little bit more specific.
I think that what we need is a presentation on what the language is, and then hear from the board about what they want to do. I'm always a little uncomfortable with the word suggestion because, I can ignore a suggestion. That doesn't really mean anything. Like, I appreciate hearing your thoughts, all right? But I'm going to go do what I want to do. So, and this board and then the commission may decide not to change in it, but I think what we need to do is let's have a presentation where we see the language. now we have a fairly fresh example of how this actually plays out. And then we can decide, this board can make a recommendation to the commission about whether we should change that language to you shall build, if you're in the historic district, these standards, or if we are comfortable with suggestions. To the other structural elements, I'd like to add to that presentation when we come back to this board, the CRA. What can we do with the CRA for historic preservation? What would that look like? What percentage of that do we think we can peel off? I've also had conversations with other towns that do tax abatements. It's kind of it wouldn't be something that would help save a house, but it might, it would help whoever builds here, whoever owns here, a little help to maintain it and keep it. So if we can talk about the CRA, talk about tax abatements, this board was talking about something like an HOA, which I haven't found anybody else that has a historic district HOA, but I think that I think it's an interesting concept to think about. I don't know how that would play out in reality, but I'd like to have that conversation, because I do think that the frustrating part about these things is by the time we get into the conversation in a formal way, because informally we've been trying to save that house for years, it's kind of almost too late, because now you've done all the informal stuff, and then, people come out and say, well, I never heard about it. You say, well, I screamed it from every rooftop that I could scream it from, but if there was something that triggered more of a conversation, headline, something at the beginning of that process, and I don't know. I mean, if you don't read Facebook, if you don't read the website, if you don't watch TV 20, if you don't go to Country Kitchen and talk to people, I run out of ideas of how to get the information around to people. But I don't want to continually put us in a situation where, we've tried for 3 years, and the people who haven't heard about it feel like this is fresh. The people who've been working on it for 3 years feel like they're exhausted, and, there's nothing to do at that point. So that's my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. Staff has a little bit of homework. All right, with that being said, I don't have any other topics for member discussion, so I'll adjourn this meeting.